Today is July the 22nd, 2023. My name is Tanya Finchum. I'm with Oklahoma State University with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. With me today is Amanda Williams, a 2018 graduate of Oklahoma State University, who was one of the original Ruff Riders for Pete's Pet Posse, P3 for short. We are in the Edmond Library on the Stillwater campus, and this interview will be a part of the Stories from Oklahoma State University collection and will focus on Pete's Pet Posse. By way of context, P3, OSU's pet therapy program, was established in 2013 as part of the university's commitment to being America's healthiest campus and is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. P3 supports emotional wellness of students, staff, and faculty and has grown beyond the OSU Stillwater campus. With that said, thank you for meeting with me today. Let's begin with a little bit about you before we get into P3.
Well, thank you for having me. I grew up in Western Oklahoma in Elk City, went to school at Merritt, graduated there in 2013. I am middle child. I have, three younger brothers, two older brothers, and an older sister. And then I decided on OSU because I wanted to be a small animal veterinarian. So, of course, had to choose the home state college, which I think is one of the best in the nation for veterinary sciences. And so I did all my undergrad, and then it actually took me a year extra. I lost my mom my sophomore year of, maybe it was my junior. It was 2016. So lost her in the spring of 16. So I took a year to get extra classes, bring everything where it needed to be. And then I actually didn't know Pete's Pet Posse was a thing when I was coming here in the fall of 2013. I just happened to be in the Kerdrum mezzanine, and they brought Zipper in. He was like one of the first ones I met. And that's how I knew P3 was a thing here, and immediately just loved campus even more than I already did. And then once they became larger and larger, I started getting more involved with them, going to more of the visits. And then eventually I met Kendria and Charlie, and I loved Kendria's personality from the get-go, really all of the handlers, because they were so genuinely interested in each and every student, why they chose OSU, why they're here. If you came to a visit 2 weeks down the road, 3 weeks down the road, they would remember who you were. They may ask your name, but I mean, how many students do they meet a day?
Exactly, yes.
And they would pick right back up on the last conversation you had. And I loved it. And then I think fall of 13 was when they started the Ruff Rider program. And Kendria had asked Ashley and I kind of, hey, are you interested? We're going to do interviews and all this and orientation. And I think it was one of the best decisions I ever made. I loved it. And I loved getting to connect with other students who were out of state, international, learning about them, why they chose campus. And then you could tell how much the program meant to every single student. Because if somebody was having a rough day, or they were just excited because there was a dog on campus, like, it was an immediate relief almost watching the students interact with them and seeing their day just get a little brighter. Mm. I loved it. Wish I could still do it, honestly.
Well, let's back up and then we'll come back to that. Back in high school, were you always wanted to be a vet, or how did that come? How did you come to that?
So my mom was a dog groomer at a vet clinic, and she was also the office manager. And she did that for about 30 years. And so when I was little, I got to go to work with her some days, and I really enjoyed being around everything. As I got older, I got to watch more and more. And as soon as I turned 16, I got to work, and I started actually in the kennels and eventually assisted in surgeries, appointments, everything. Started working the front desk, and I just really loved, even though it was all small animal, occasionally like pocket pets. You'd see a hamster every now and then, but it's all same animals, but it was something different every day. And I loved it. And that's kind of why I chose veterinary medicine. I was kind of grew up inside of it, and it was a lot of fun.
Well, in high school, did you lean toward the science and the biology part of things that you were?
I think so. I enjoyed the science aspect, not so much the math, but I grew to like it. But definitely loved sciences growing up.
I'm thinking Elk City has a Carnegie Library too, doesn't it? Yeah, that's the only thing I know about Elk City.
Didn't go there much, but.
Did you visit the campus before you decided to come here?
I did. I think it was our junior or senior year. They kind of introduce you to, hey, you need to start looking at your colleges if you're considering. And we did a campus tour one day, and then I came back and did orientation and enrollment. And
did you check out any other ones, or was it just
nope, just this one, just OSU. It was my only choice.
Of your extended family, are you the first one to come to OSU?
I am.
To OSU, okay.
First to come to OSU.
Any OU, so we have the house divided?
No.
Thing? Okay, don't have to worry about that football or basketball time.
Not at all. Easy decisions.
So when you first came, did you bring yourself, or did your family bring you and drop you off?
I think we met up. It was multiple schools kind of got together. It may have been through like the VOTEC, Western Technology Center out of Burns Flat. And I think we did it that way, but I honestly can't remember. I just knew I was so excited to come that day. Did a group, and then eventually, I think my parents and I came up. I know they helped move me in, but I knew before I even applied here, this was the only college I was going to apply to. It's the only place I wanted to go.
You didn't have a backup plan, huh?
No backup plan. I was dead set on OSU.
Well, where did you live when you came?
I actually lived in Drummond Hall for a year and a half, and then halfway through the school year, I got hired as a residential advisor. And so I went from there to Patchen Hall. And then I eventually moved just across the easement into Jones Hall. And I was an RA for the rest of my OSU career.
Okay, that helps with room and board, I guess, or at least
it does.
Room, I don't know.
Yeah, it was room and board. And
Did you get a little cash too? No. So,
okay, well, just room and your meal plan. So it wasn't bad. I loved it.
Well, what were some things that were going on campus at that point? But you came in 2013.
I came in 2013,
okay.
And it was supposed to be the last year Kerr Drummond was open.
Okay.
But Kerr Drummond actually continued to be open for a couple of years. I don't remember exactly when or if they're still open.
Just the food part.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
But yeah, I loved the community living aspect because I wasn't alone, but I had several others, and I enjoyed just connecting. I still talk to friends that I met my freshman year, and we stay in touch, and I don't think I'd be where I am today if I didn't live in the dorms. Okay. I think everybody should live in the dorms.
So what floor were you on?
My freshman year was on the 5th floor.
Okay.
And then my sophomore year, I was on the 2nd floor. And after that, I was on the 4th floor both years in 3 years in Patchen Jones.
And by that time, those type of dorms, were they help or living? I shouldn't say dorms anymore, so they don't really call them.
They're residential halls now.
Yeah. Did they participate in like homecoming, like decks and all of that?
Yeah, everybody did. I did help build the floats, and the house decks were more sorority and fraternity, I think. But we all did the floats, and I think we did some signs for library lawn. Okay. It was a lot of fun. I was very active in the, I can't even remember what they call it nowadays, just the community within the dorms.
I know
the res halls.
Yeah, living community. I'm not sure what they call it. In the RHA is the Resident Hall Association. Yeah. I know that much, but
it's like student council, but in the res halls.
Okay.
And it's escaped me.
What was one of the toughest things you had to do in that job?
As an RA, or they changed it to community mentor towards the end, I don't know. It really wasn't tough. Actually, the toughest part, now that I think about it, was if you had a resident who was struggling, or if you knew, like, hey, you're going to have to kind of get on to them, they're being loud, or anything they weren't supposed to. It was tough because you were friends with majority of them. Mm-hmm. So that was a hard line, but I'm glad it never came down to a lot of that. It was more like, hey, how are you? What are you doing today? You want to hang out in the lounge? Do you want to study? Like, even though we weren't in any of the same classes, we just kind of studied together. I guess I enjoyed that too.
Not too much rule breaking.
Oh no, they were all fantastic. I loved all my residents.
Back in my day, we weren't allowed to have like electric skillets, but we broke that rule and got in trouble. So I don't know if that sort of thing happens.
No, we didn't have. As far as I know, you still can't have electric skillets. Like, you could have crock pots and stuff, but in Patch and Jones, they have community kitchens in each of the lounges, so that was so nice. Okay. And several times residents would just get together and have a meal on this night, a meal on that night. I know several times my friends and I got together just to watch a TV show. Like, we watched The Bachelor a couple times throughout the year. Got together and did meals or ordered pizza, just hung out in the lounge. It was nice.
So you already had some of those community building skills when you got here then. I mean, there's some students don't. I mean, yeah, that's hard on some of them. Did you get homesick?
Occasionally, especially at first, because it was my first, away from home for this amount of time. But home was only a 2.5, 3-hour drive. So it wasn't bad. I would go home every couple of weekends. But other than that, I enjoyed it.
You already knew how to do laundry and cook and all that too.
I knew all that, so it was a lot of fun. It was nice.
Were you in FFA or 4-H?
No,
I was with animals. You might have been with one of those.
No, I didn't get to do 4-H just because during high school, going to VOTEC, that took up half of your day. So most of the 4-H classes were in the afternoon, whereas I was taking my required courses for graduation in the morning, and then I went to VOTEC for biomedical sciences.
Oh, you were prepping.
Yeah, I was taking a couple AP classes, and I really think if anybody has the chance to do a program like that, they should, because the biology class I took at VOTEC was the exact same course I took here.
So you breezed through.
Not really breezed through, but it was so helpful getting to look back and reference, okay, I didn't get this, but I know I struggled with it here, because I kept all my notes, all my textbooks. I kept everything that I could, and I referenced back to, in the past, okay, well, this is wrong, but why? Or, hey, this is how you would learn it. Kind of, is it mnemonics, where you would have like an acronym and what it would mean. So I could reference back and be like, oh, I remember that now. And that was helpful.
You were really prepared.
I tried to. I knew vet school was going to be tough. So I did as much prep as I could.
And I'm assuming you got through vet school?
I did not get accepted into vet school. Okay. I applied once and did not get accepted. The requirements changed, and I would have to have, I think, 2 classes. And so I decided to go home for a little bit and save up money to go back to school and kind of decide do I want to go to vet school? And so I continued working at the clinic until the doctor retired, actually last February. So I hung around there because it was all I knew and I didn't want to change it. So
what was your degree in when you finished?
I had a bachelor's in animal science and a minor in microbiology.
You could be a high school teacher then.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know if I could do it. It takes a lot.
But with the background, if you chose to, you might not have to do too much more.
And actually, how I ended up with the minor, I didn't come choosing a minor. I just knew, okay, I'm going to do animal science pre-veterinary medicine as my bachelor. Well, staying that extra year, I needed classes to fill up my time. So I was like, well, this is kind of what's available. I already have several microbiology courses. And then my advisor at the time was like, I think you're going to have enough credits. Go talk to the microbiology department and see if you can get your minor because you'll have enough credits. So I went and talked with her and she's like, oh yeah, you just need like one more class and you'll have a minor. I was like, sure, it'll fill my time and I get a minor. So it worked out in the end, and I really loved the microbiology classes. I loved the labs. Those were so fun.
Was there one that just about ate your lunch? A class?
Chemistry, biochemistry, physics, all of those.
More than one, huh?
Yes, because those were some of the classes I didn't get to take in high school. Mm. So I wish I would have had that more prep area, but if I would have had that, then I wouldn't have had another area. And so it was a pick and choose, but in the end, I'm glad that OSU had so many resources for help. There was the tutoring center in classroom building, I think is where it was, or it was in the union. I can't remember. Maybe the library. It's been so many years, but having the tutoring departments and classmates that would help, I ended up passing physics. And I tell this to everybody. My freshman year, I ended up making friends with the engineering floor in Kerr. And of course, it was an all-male dorm, and I lived in Drummond. But they did a big block party during Welcome Week, and I made friends. And so they were the ones who helped anytime I had questions in chemistry or physics, math, and I couldn't get to the tutoring center. They helped.
Well, how did you know about the tutoring centers?
Every single class told you.
Okay.
And one of my classes, it was actually a requirement to have so many hours in the tutoring facility for that semester. Okay. So I just, once a week is all I have to go for an hour or two. I'm like, well, that's not bad. You knock out some homework, do some tutoring in any area that you were struggling with. And I think it was so beneficial. And of course, it's not just for a few classes. They had it for majority, if not all classes, because there's somebody that is going through the same thing that you are or went through it a year or two prior. And so.
Did they give you some training as an RA to help other students in this, point them in directions like that?
Yeah, they had training for, I think it was like a week before Rush started. And so we moved in, got everything prepped, and then they moved in. And then that following week was Welcome Week. But we had a full week dedicated to just training, different scenarios. And of course, they can't prep you for every single thing possible, but they can give you the basics. And it wasn't just, okay, you're a community mentor or an RA now, like on you go. You always had access to somebody if you needed help with anything. And often when you were on duty or on call for that night a week, you always had a partner. So if somebody needed help, you were always buddy systemed.
Didn't panic too often.
No. And it was a lot quieter in Patch and Jones than Drummond was, because I lived in Drummond just as a resident. And it wasn't loud, but there was a lot more shenanigans in the community style dorms.
Yeah, I'm thinking, what is 10 floors? Is it 10 floors, Drummond? Or maybe
12.
More than that. Yeah.
I think it's 12.
Yeah. It would not be fun fighting for the elevator at certain times if you're.
It wasn't horrible, but it did get crowded sometimes. But living on like the second and the fifth floor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Second floor, I never took the elevator except for after I had foot surgery. So I was on a knee scooter for half of the first semester. But other than that, I just took the stairs. It was sometimes faster in the long run.
Besides OSU having what you wanted with the vet side of things, was there something else about campus that drew you here?
Friendliness, and it's a beautiful campus. I don't think anybody could come here and say, oh, this isn't pretty. Like, it is the prettiest campus ever. Everybody is so friendly, and everybody is so helpful. And it doesn't matter if you knew them for 2 seconds or 2 years or 20 years. Everybody from other students all the way up to administration, staff, faculty. That's what I really liked.
Had you been here before the first, when was the first time you came to campus? Let's ask that.
I think it was my sophomore or junior year of high school. So like
okay.
When I came for that first tour to do, I think it was just to tour campus. And that was the first time I came, and I was like, okay, yep, for sure, gonna come here. No other ifs, ands, or buts. I'm coming.
Been like 2010-ish?
Yeah.
11?
10. Well, maybe 10, 11, or 12. Somewhere in there we came and did our tour, and then you went through the applications, and then you did enrollment.
Okay. And I guess you walked around Theta Pond at that point, huh?
Many times. Many times.
Yes. So let's do graduation, then we'll get back to P3. Do you remember graduation day?
I do. It was hot.
In the stadium or in the Gallagher?
Just campus. It was hot. So trying to walk from point A in the res halls, getting over to the Noble Research Center to meet up with your class or your college department, and then walk over to Gallagher IBA, and you're just in a black robe. So it was hot. It was fun. Definitely a very memorable graduation because I'd never been to a graduation that not necessarily elite, but just elaborate, and a lot of detail goes into it. And they don't just say like, okay, congratulations, class of 2018. I feel like they made each student special.
It's fun, I think, to see the regalia of the faculty that come in from all the different colors and hats and things.
And showing just their college, their department, maybe what their major was or their doctorate. I think that is awesome that it's a tradition to wear. If you didn't come to OSU, you wear your alma mater's regalia.
Yeah.
And I think that helps symbolize the diversity within OSU, but the unity as well, because everybody's all here for the same reason, I feel like. And it's to better oneself and get education and go out into the world and do your best at what you love. So I really like it.
And you went back to Elk City or?
I worked in Elk City and lived in Clinton. But went home.
Yeah. So what are you doing these days?
I actually currently own my own engraving business, and then I also work in a screen print and embroidery business. So
that's pretty cool.
Different than what I went to college for, but I love it.
Right.
You kind of get to be crafty, which I love doing in my spare time. Just it's a good way to get your mind off everything or decompress at the end of the day. And I still can't believe it's different than the career path I originally wanted, but I love the career path I'm in now.
A lot of us change. I'm on my third one, so you're good.
Oh my goodness.
So it's, it happens.
It does.
Okay, then let's just switch gears into P3 a little bit. You said you first were aware of the program in 2013 when you saw them in Curdrum. What was the process of, they picked you said, though, for the first?
Kinda. And I think it was more of, they opened it up to all the students, but I feel like they definitely reached out to the students that were more invested in a way, who went to most of the visits.
Okay.
There were days Ashley and I would say, hey, Huxley's going to be here and Charlie's going to be here, or Andrew's going to be over here. Do you want to try to hop through and see all the dogs today? And we would work it between our classes and work schedules, and we just go from visit to visit as there became more visits. And that was fun, just getting to spend time with them.
Did you have a favorite? No, you don't have to say who it was, but did you have a favorite?
They were all my favorite for many different reasons.
Okay.
And I think it's just the dogs' personalities, the handlers' personalities. What was really fun is Dr. Heine, which is Hitch's handler. She taught a class, I can't even remember the name of it, but I think it was like intro to animal, not behaviors, but just a basic companion animal class. And I ended up being a TA for it because I needed hours to fill. And I was like, yeah, I loved that class when I took it. And it was under a different professor. And I was like, this can't get any better. I get to be a TA for a class I loved. And I get to hang out with Hitch in class. So that was nice.
So, and then later on, I know that it's a process now. That's because they have so many people apply. Did you ever have to go through that process?
I think we submitted like just an application, and I think we did interviews. I can't remember. But then it started as, I think there's probably 20 of us-ish the first year. And I think they capped it at 20 for that second year. But I feel like most of the people who were in it the first year were there the second year. And by then, Ashley and I graduated. And then I know it's grown since then because each class, I feel like it doesn't get bigger, but there's more dogs on campus. So there needs to be more Ruff Riders on campus. And I love how much the program has blossomed. And it's more, I still bump into people today and talk about P3 and they have no clue OSU had it. I'm like, it's been there almost 10 years or 10 years now. How do you not know about it? They've done so many publicity or publications about it, and even other campuses have seen it. Obviously, we've expanded to the Tulsa campus. I don't know if we've gone to the Oklahoma City campus yet.
Just recently, I think.
Okay. I couldn't remember.
Yeah, I think.
But it just, I don't know if and or why other campuses don't have it yet, but I hope it's a program that goes into others as well, or they form their own. Of course, they're not all going to be Pete's Pet Posse, but I hope they have their own version on campus because I think it's been a valuable asset to every student here.
Were you part of the decision to call it Ruff Riders? How they came up with that name? I don't know.
No, I think Kendria had already had the name picked, or the faculty of Pete's Pet Posse had picked it, but I think it was the perfect name.
It is.
I love it.
Did you help recruit others, or did they even need to recruit other students to do it?
There was no recruiting needed. Everybody wanted to do it.
Okay.
Every visit, people got, of course, we all had like a t-shirt that had the Pete's Pet Posse logo. And then the second year, we all had polos just to make it nicer. And everybody, I think it was to help distinguish us from the students who needed it. Of course, during the visits, we sat back and just answered questions or passed out their trading cards and just helped the handler kind of address questions that any of the students had. And everybody always asked, well, how did you get into this? Yeah. I'm like, okay, well, there's going to be applications at the end of the year or early fall. So follow the Facebook page, follow us, and apply when it's time. And of course, those students ended up becoming more and more, they went to more visits with many different dogs. And there was a couple times I had 2 visits in a day with different handlers, and I would see some of the same students. So,
well, that's good.
Yeah, it was good. I don't think there's a single person who doesn't like P3. I mean, you can't not like it.
Well, unless you're allergic, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
You can still like it from afar.
Oh, yeah. And there were several that did, just because maybe they grew up with a fear of dogs. We actually did have one student who didn't have dogs growing up, was kind of scared of them. And I think that was a good introduction for them. And towards the end of the year, they came to a couple visits and would pet them. And they still sat back, but I think it was great for them.
So you got to select which events or whatever you wanted to pair up with the owner?
Yeah.
Owner? They
had a sign-up form. They'd email it out every, I think, week or few weeks, and you could pick the date and time and the handler and dog that you wanted to work with.
So you had to beat, if you wanted a particular one, you had to beat the next person.
Yeah, you had to beat them.
Get your name in there.
Yeah, you had to beat them and claim it. And it was a lot of fun.
So from a practical standpoint, was that one of the first things you would check in the morning or a day or two ahead?
Yeah, as soon as it came out, I would check it.
We were talking about how you started your day checking to see what events were out there to choose from. I planned out my class and work schedule. Always planned out what events I was going to be working on with the campus organizations I was in. And then from there, I would go through and just check and see what lined up with my schedule, and I would claim them. And of course, as a Ruff Rider, you got volunteer hours. And so I ended up doing the cord program through the Alumni Association and to get my cord. So I think I had to have about 400 hours by the time I graduated to have the cord. And so more visits, obviously, are a great experience just to be a part of, but that was also the more hours I got. Sorry, I'm going to get a drink again. So you were busy if you had your classes, and then you were a TA, and then been an RA, and So how many did you try to do a day or a week?
I tried to do 1 or 2, and then of course if my schedule allowed it, if there were any openings when it got closer to that date, because I'm not going to go in and take all of them, because everybody needs a chance to work with the dogs they want to work with, or they need the chance to get their hours too. But if it's like Monday and I see nobody's taking the spot on Thursday and I can do it, I'll take it. So
1 or 2 a week? Week? And you started in 13, so did you do it your entire...
I think the Ruff Riders started in like fall of 16.
16, okay. So did you do it the entire time, Joe, that you were here?
Yeah,
once I started.
Yeah, once I started, I did it until I graduated.
So prior to that, though, you were just going to the visits to meet the dogs or whatever.
Meet the dogs, and I tried to collect everybody's training card. And I think by the time I graduated, I had all of them, or I was only missing a few. I wish I would have brought them, but I still haven't found them from moving. So,
well, let's talk a little bit about the trading cards. I noticed on the back there's details like birth date of the dog and the breed, of course, and then that they're certified. They had to do canine good citizen.
Yes,
canine good citizen, and Alliance of Dog Therapy dogs. And this one says favorite treats.
So that was fun. There were a couple of dogs that we worked with that students would bring the dog's favorite treat to the visit for them. And I was working with Cooper one day, and I think his was like Lay's potato chips and peanut butter. And a student brought like a little snack bag of Lay's. Another kid brought peanut butter crackers. I always carried Sonic mints in my backpack because one of the therapy dogs would split a Sonic mint with its handler. So I always had like a handful of Sonic mints. So I was one of those students too. And of course they got them in moderation, but it was fun.
That was my next question. You'd have to watch they get plump after a while.
They could, but all the dogs were so well taken care of. They were healthy, and all the handlers thought it was sweet and funny that students would bring the favorite snacks.
So they would be around campus. Were there particular buildings that you like to go to? Like I know they have them in the library on occasion, and other buildings I'm sure. But
I really enjoyed doing the res hall visits, especially if I was working close to that time. It was just 2-second walk. Library, I love doing it between classes. And I think it was the 3rd floor of the Union where they have that quiet, calm room. I would go in there. I loved that one, by far my favorite. And I think it's just because of how calm the room was. It didn't matter how busy or calm your day was. You could just go in there, sit, relax. They had nice pillows, dim lighting, Some of the computers had breathing exercises you could do on there. I highly suggest checking it out if you haven't been up there.
I haven't. I'll have to.
But it was nice. That way, the students, usually that room, there was a smaller crowd. But once more students figured out there were therapy dogs up there, it got crowded a couple times.
How many would be in there? Dog wise, how many would be in there? One at a time.
Yeah.
I think there must be some rules about.
Yeah, so many feet and stuff like that. And that room's not very big, but you also don't want to turn the calm room into a loud room when everybody's excited for the dogs. So.
Yeah, and did you have a preference for small dogs, big dogs?
I loved them all. I love the big dogs, like Winston, Nellie. Those were two of my favorites. Liam, the Bernese Mountain Dog. I worked with him a couple times.
I think there's Great Pyrenees now. That's the biggest one that I have seen.
I need to look and see what dogs got in this last class.
All the way down to a dachshund. and most, or I understand that it's a mix between purebreds and rescues and anything in between.
Yes. I think Pippin was a mix I worked with quite a bit. Charlie and Evie. Those were some of the ones I worked with the most, and I don't know if it's not necessarily the most, but I think it's just because they were there when we went through our interviews and orientations. We got to talk with the owner and owner handler, and of course the dog, meet them, and got to go to more of their visits too, just because we claimed to visit. But it was nice getting to. Of course, all the handlers are nice. But once you build that relationship with them and you work more with some of the same handlers, that relationship is great.
Did you work with Scruff any?
A couple times. I did. Anne is such a sweetheart.
So I'm guessing everybody wanted to do that at least once or twice.
It's an unwritten rule. Everybody's got to work with Scruff at some point.
Scruff's still around. He got into the 2022 Oklahoma Animal Hall of Fame.
Oh, that's so cool. I didn't even know that was a thing.
I didn't either.
He deserves to be in it. All the therapy dogs deserve it, though.
Did you have a dog at home?
I did. I had several growing up, and then now my husband and I have one dog and one cat. But growing up, we had 3 or 4 at a time, and so we were never... I don't remember a time that we didn't have an animal.
So you were already comfortable with them, and it kind of drew you to that too.
Mm-hmm. And we had like a little dachshund mix at one point, all the way up to a Saint Bernard. So I was comfortable with all sizes.
You had experience then. Mm-hmm. From a student standpoint, can you say what the magic was? I mean, what was so special or unique about P3?
Everybody understood. The dog understood, and the dogs knew. Like, if there was somebody there having a rough day, they would go to that person. I don't know what it is, but I think that was part of it. And, of course, the dog's there, and you're petting it, and it's just loving you back. Occasionally they'd like lick your hand or just spend more time in front of you. And the handlers took the time to make sure they talked with every single student. Not just, hey, how are you? How's your day? What's your name? It was like, what's your degree? What do you want to do in life? Well, have you thought of doing this? Or how does what you want to do and what your goal is, how is that going to look in a few years? Or what exactly do you want to do with it?
And what would the student handler be doing during that time?
They would, just chatting with that student. And there was a couple students that, of course, would come in having a really rough day. And just, I think, being there and having that someone to talk to. Mm-hmm. That helped a lot. Dogs are an added bonus. But I think it was just that human connection of somebody being there, that you could talk to them, where it wasn't just, They weren't strangers, but you were comfortable talking to them about whatever's going on. And several students, of course, they'd still be upset when they left, but it wasn't as bad, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Did they give you training on situations like that?
No.
What not to say?
I think it was more of just kind of being there and kind of letting the owner handler handle that. Of course, we would just chat with everybody, but it was more just letting the student talk as much or as little as they wanted. But we'd check in on them, be like, hey, how are you? Doing great, great. Oh, you're having a rough day. Sorry to hear about that. I hope it does get better. And just chatting with them just to see if they're going to be okay.
Well, did the program have anything for those of you, like in regards to self-care after
Some of the owner handlers would get there early, or as we were leaving, they'd say, hey, do you need like a minute? And that was nice. Okay. Especially if you got there early, you got a special one-on-one time with the pet before everybody realized you were there. But it wasn't like we got this day at this time for a whole hour, because I don't think that would work with anybody's schedule. But once you've worked with some of the owner handlers so many times, they kind of knew how each person or what they would need. Mm. And that was nice, getting to build that relationship to that point where they could tell, I think you might need an extra minute today. Like, we'll stick around.
I'd say that happens. Speaking of that sort of thing, you would have been here in 2015 when the homecoming parade crash accident occurred. Do you remember anything in particular about the P3 during that, the aftermath of that?
I remember we had held a lot more visits at that time, because everybody needed it, I feel like. And just getting to hear accounts of the students who were there or knew someone who got hurt in the accident. And of course, that's traumatic for those that were there. I wasn't at the parade that morning. But I'm glad P3 had those additional visits for the ones who needed it. And counseling services, I remember, opened up their doors and allowed more sessions during that time. And I think that was very helpful for those who needed it.
I'd say being an RA, you might have had some.
Yeah, if our students had a tough time or needed anything, of course, we had open doors. I kept my door open most of the time if I was in the room, even if I wasn't on call. But those that needed it, they knew, like, they could text if they wanted to chat, or I could say, hey, here's the number to counseling services. If you think you need it, go ahead and call. If you'd like me to walk there with you, I will do that. But just being there for those who need it, when they need it, it didn't matter if you knew them or not. I think that was more of just, you didn't have to be told to do that. I think it was just the human nature of helping someone in their time of need.
Did the P3 come to your res hall during that time? Do you recall?
I think they may have.
I think they tried to hit all of them.
I do think they tried to go to every res hall. I think doing some of the more central locations, they came to Wentz Hall quite a bit. And I think it's just because there was a larger lounge area. Mm. That way students who didn't want to partake in the P3, they could have their area, and we had more open area over here. And of course, Patch and Jones had room too. Excuse me. But I think it was, they tried to go to every res hall at least once. I could be wrong, but I feel like even though they didn't have to go just for the homecoming accident, I still feel like throughout the year, they tried to go everywhere. But during that time, I do think they had more of a presence on campus. And it helps that the handlers even had office hours. They would have their dogs in the office and be like, hey, Chunk, for instance, and her owners they would post and say, Chunk's in the office today from 2 to 3 if you want to stop by. And I think that helped, but they did that throughout the year too.
Buildings, or there were, I'm assuming there were some places that they weren't allowed to go or whatever, but the library was one on the first floor usually, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Right on each side of the staircase, usually.
And it's not carpeted down there, so that's a good thing. We don't have to worry about shed.
Yeah, shed happens. Yeah. It's part of it.
I've seen a bumper sticker that says that's part of Peak 3 early on. So
yeah, we passed out those stickers, so I still have a couple of them.
So they had to do some of that promoting the program early on, and I guess they still do if people aren't can come here and not know that it exists. But after you've walked around campus and you see the statue over here. And you graduated in 2018, so you weren't here when the statue was. No. Or I should say Celebration Garden is what they call it. Mm-hmm. P3 Celebration Garden. So you have to go see it before you leave.
Yeah, I have to. I already told my husband, like, hey, we got to go see that because that's Kendria's.
It's Kendria's. And you worked with Charlie some. Mm-hmm. And you said you didn't need to recruit other students to do.
Oh, no, it wasn't hard to recruit anybody at all. And of course, they would come and ask, like, what do you like about it? What do you don't like? Which I don't think there's anything we didn't like, other than we wish there was more time to spend with them. But other than that, it was easy to not even have to convince them, just tell other students, like, hey, if this is something you want to do it.
You weren't required to do a certain number of hours each week as part of it?
I don't think so. It may have been so many hours a semester.
Okay, so you spread it out if you need to.
It was easy to do, especially if there were Ruff Riders that had something come up. Occasionally, like we did Wentz Hall a couple nights throughout the year, and someone would have a quick study session come up close to midweek or mid-semester, and they would say, hey, I can't make this visit. Can you trade visits with me, or can you cover it? Mm-hmm. We all did that, and just to help each other.
And would they do one if they didn't have a Ruff Rider?
Occasionally.
It wasn't a requirement that they had to have one?
It wasn't a requirement.
Okay.
But it was a lot of help to the handler to have a Ruff Rider there, just to help pass out the cards, stickers, or anything. Because one person trying to handle many students at a time for an hour that are coming and going, that's a lot. Just to make sure everybody had their time with the dog, or even just got to check in of, hey, how are you?
Did you notice if it was more female or male students that?
I'd say it was a good 50-50.
A mix. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Just definitely a mix. Everybody came, whether they were in-state, out-of-state, international. It was a good mix.
So your role primarily was to hand out the trading cards and just listen?
Yeah, just hand out cards, stickers, listen, answer questions if they were like, oh, hey, like, who's this dog? Be like, oh, hey, this is Winston. Come meet Winston. He's a Malamute. And
he likes to shake hands. No.
Yeah. Shake his paw.
Any of them like to do that? I mean, some dogs do, some don't.
Some of them did.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember who, but they all had like their own tricks that they would do.
And so if it was like a snowy day or a rainy day, did they still do visits?
Sometimes. I think it was more weather dependent. If it was going to be a lot of snow, a lot of ice, or travel conditions, they would cancel the visits. Or if they couldn't find an owner handler to fill the slot on Thursday and there's only going to be one dog there, they'd cancel that night's event and say, catch us next week. We'll have whoever. Because also the owner handlers had to sign up for events too. It wasn't just a set time and date and they get every Thursday throughout the year. They got to pick.
Were they mostly after lunch or is it morning slots as well?
There may have been some morning spots, but I do feel like after lunch, just because there's more time.
Yeah, I'm thinking we see them more in the library more after lunch.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong on that, but it seems like that's the case.
Yeah, I think most of it was just after lunch. That way everybody could get through the morning of, okay, this is what I got to do today. Make sure my stuff's taken care of so I can go and be at this visit later. But some of them, I think a few of them had open office hours in the morning or days that they could go to. If they couldn't catch a visit, you could just pop by and say hi. Actually, Abby Kate was the owner handler, and Andrew. She was in I think it was called the New Student Orientation Office on the second floor of the Union. Mm-hmm. I would go hang out in her office between classes during lunch and just hang out with some of the students there, and because there were student employees in there too. So we all got to hang out and chat, and I hung out with Andrew, and then I'd go to class.
Seems like it was a good way to connect with lots of folks, mm-hmm. and good from a student standpoint to have that ability to do that.
Oh yeah, it was. I think everybody benefited from it, and going through some of the office hours, and especially buildings that you don't spend a lot of time in, you may find out about a cool event that you might want to check out, or some new class they're going to offer, because they'll offer those, I call them mini courses, where they're just a few weeks towards, I think a couple of the ones I saw were at the end of a semester, just a quick mini course that you could take. And I never took any of them, but I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Just if you need to fill an hour or half an hour of your schedule for the year, course-wise, that was something good that they offered.
No regrets having said, I want to do this.
No.
But you were kind of proactive, too, though, by going to visit. You took advantage of mm-hmm. the opportunity to meet all these dogs, too, on a regular basis.
Yeah, especially if I wasn't the Ruff Rider on that visit. I would still go just to say hey to the Ruff Rider, because you don't always get to see all of them. Okay. And, of course, hang out with the handler and the dog and other students. And you would see some of the same students at some of the visits.
Would they have events throughout the year just for Ruff Riders? I mean, ways of letting you all connect with each other?
We did orientation, but I don't think we did any parties or get-togethers throughout the year. But most of us Ruff Riders went to some of the same visits, so we all connected at some point or were friends with each other, and I don't think we really needed any special time, but we all knew each other well because we all went to visits when we weren't working that visit.
So I'll ask that gender question too. Were there more males or female Ruff Riders?
I think there were definitely more females.
But a few males too, though?
I think we had one or two the second year, but I can't remember exactly. But I definitely think it was primarily women.
That's interesting, isn't it?
It's very interesting.
Although there's more female vet students these days than there used to be, so that may have something to...
I think that could play a part into it. I have noticed there are more male Ruff Riders now.
Okay.
I see them do the, hey, meet the owner handler, meet the dog, meet the Ruff Rider for the year. And I've noticed there's a lot more men doing it.
Okay, they're going to, I think, from what I understand, since it's the 10th anniversary, they're going to have some kind of reunion later in the fall. They're going to try to work all that out. So keep your eyes.
Guess I got to come to campus again.
I know. I'm thinking that maybe during something to do around homecoming time.
Oh, that'd be so fun.
But I could be wrong on that too. But they have mentioned it. There's no details yet. But that'd be cool to see. There's got to be a lot of them by now.
Several.
7 years of Ruff Riders. What, 20 or 30 or more a year?
Probably. It feels like there were that many.
Of course, but
yeah, definitely some repeats. And I noticed since I did it for 2 years in a row, and there were some girls in there with me that did it those years, I graduated and they were still doing it until they graduated. So I think there's definitely some rollover of returning Ruff Riders, but there's definitely new ones coming in each year.
So you would have, if you were kept going, you would not have chosen not to be a part of it anyway.
I would never choose to leave P3.
Okay.
Never.
There's no negative side to it.
No. And even just coming today, I was like, man, I hope I bump into some of them and hope they're on campus. And I was like, oh yeah, it's on a Saturday. They're not going to be on campus on Saturday.
No, I think if it's closer to semester starting, they might be, but
right, or homecoming weekend, and they might be cruising around. Definitely during pre-finals and finals week, there were more visits. I don't think there were any on weekends still, but there was more visits across campus.
Well, then your time was precious too, because you were having that time to study yourself. So, but you made time to do the other.
Mm-hmm. I made time to do as much as I could.
And the gear for you guys was the shirt, and then for the dogs was they have their little
vest.
Yeah,
they had their vest and their backpack, and then we did do. I think it was an end of the year. Not quite like a luncheon, but just a quick get together. And we did get P3 blankets. The Ruff Riders and the handlers did. And I still have mine somewhere. I don't use it because I don't want to get it ruined.
Did you ever go to any of the baccalaureates where they graduate in the next class of dogs?
I think I went to I think it was class 6. I went to their baccalaureate because we actually got to help with some of the training. You got that opportunity of, hey, if you want to train, you can sign up to. And what we did during the training was be the distractions that they needed to ignore. And so some of the dogs knew us just after being there a few weeks. They would be excited to see us when we're like, okay, well, we have to be distracting and have them ignore us. But that was definitely a fun perk of being a Ruff Rider, is getting to help train the therapy dogs.
And what did you do to distract them? Do you remember?
Just make noise, move, jingle a backpack, or a couple times I don't think we ended up dropping anything, but just moving in and out of the room close by from a distance, and just if the owner handler needed anything, like, hey, can you move the dog's mat? Yeah, I'll move it over here, because that gives them their place during a visit. Some were soft. They would bring a blanket or a mat. Some of them didn't, but they had that chance of, I guess if they're going to be outside or in the library, if it's a slick floor, they had their place. And they could do that.
I hadn't paid attention to that. I'll have to look.
Yeah, some of them had it,
if
I remember correctly. But
yeah, I think someone had said that there was one that did not like walking on the tile in the library. So that makes sense too. That dogs might be a little different. And no cats.
Yeah, no cats. A couple of them love the squirrels, though.
Yeah, that was a no-no. And I know they're supposed to behave if they've got on their uniform, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
You would think, did they show up for probably not for graduation. There's too much activity going
I
on.
think there's too much hustle and bustle.
Yeah, too much, and they weren't really needed. By that point, people were celebrating. They got through.
Yeah, we're all celebrating. But leading up to, like, during finals week and graduation, of course, if we were done with finals, we would pick up extra visits or just go to the visits to attend them. And
well, if you didn't sign up for it, you could still.
Yeah, you could still
go.
Yeah, you could still go and be there for 10, 15 minutes if it was on your way to class. A lot of us did that. We're like, hey, we can't work this visit, but we'll like hang out for a few minutes, but then I gotta go. But we weren't working it. But we'd just come and sit for a couple minutes.
Most of them were an hour. So if you signed up for one, you tried to be there for the entire hour. Yeah,
most of the visits were an hour.
And that's long enough for the dog to be stroked so much, I guess.
Yeah, and you could tell some of them were tired after their visit.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of mental stimulation for them, and
especially if they're swarmed with 10 or 15 students.
That, and they're excited about every single person that comes through the door. So I would get exhausted too.
Well, then, if in that case for you, what would you do to relax?
I would probably, I think what I did was go to my dorm and just have the evening, or meet up with friends and go get dinner on or off campus. but I think it was different from my aspect just because we did tend to sit back. That way other students could have their time with the dog. Of course, at the end of the visit, we'd stick back and walk with the owner handler out if we were going the same direction. That was kind of our time with them, but we just kind of sat back and, like I said, we'd answer questions or say hi. It wasn't so much of one-on-one during that entire hour. So I think that was more their time with the dog.
Were most of the Ruff Riders like juniors and seniors? Or were they freshmen?
That first year, so 16 and 7, or fall of 16, spring of 17, I think it was mainly sophomores and up just because the freshmen weren't there yet to go through it. I actually think we may have done all that in the fall and not the spring going into the fall. So I think it was still mostly sophomore and up just because we already knew P3 existed, whereas the freshmen may not have had enough time to really put together who they are, what they are, and why. And if that was something they wanted to be a part of.
So if you were given a pitch to a freshman coming in, what would you tell them about to get involved or not get involved with P3?
Definitely, if you have a love of animals, need to be a part of it. If you're going into veterinary medicine, it's a good way to meet some of them. Some of this faculty were actually out of the Center for Veterinary Sciences, so and that was nice getting to meet some of them and talk with them. And really, mainly, if you love dogs, this is something you want to do because everybody, if they have a pet at home, they miss it. And so these are kind of not their pets, but everybody loves on them as if they were their own.
Well, it's an opportunity to meet other fellow students that are, missing home too, I guess.
Yes, and you see a lot of that in like August, September. They're homesick, and then they kind of fall into their routine. And of course, everybody misses home, but they miss home less.
It's a good thing for P3. I mean, I understand that they didn't expect it to be 10 years and still doing this, but they're glad that, of course, that it is.
I'm glad they're still going, and I hope they continue to grow. And I hope this type of program expands across the U.S., even internationally. That would be so cool.
So if you graduated in 2018, then they have their official office now in the student union. On the second floor, they have their own. It's a small space, but they still have their space.
So cool.
So and it's called the Ann Hargis OSU Pet Therapy Center or something like that. Yeah,
that is so cool. I'll have to go over there.
Yeah,
when we get done, just so
there's
I can
a glass
see it.
door you can peep in. It's a nice place. It's in 2021, I think, is when they did all of that. About the time that President Hargis was retiring, they did some of that.
Because I think before that, I think they were using Whitehurst for. Right. Well, I know Kendria and Toby and a couple of other handlers worked out of Whitehurst. Okay. So I think that was kind of the unofficial office of it. But I think Ann's office was over there too.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But now they're in the union when the front and center. I mean, you can't miss it if you're on the second floor and walking by.
I'll have to go over there.
Charlie's there quite frequently. So
love Charlie.
And she's got a new one, Sutton, trying to get her Sutton. Yeah. I think it's a she.
It's a she.
I've missed. She didn't want to come out from her desk. Treats were handy though. Oh. She would come out. I guess that's getting some of them used. I mean, they have to go through. I'm learning that they have to go through a process to be selected to be one of the pets.
Yeah, that must be I feel bad for whoever has to decide who gets in and who doesn't,
especially if there's not enough. I don't know if they haven't. I haven't learned all that yet. If there's a set number that they take, if turning someone away, tell them try again next time.
I would assume there's a set number, but I'm like, man, they're all. Of course, they're all great, but how do you decide Like, that would be tough. I'd just be like, come on, more the merrier.
Especially if they have the disposition for it.
Yes.
The dogs. Not all dogs would, but if you're applying, they probably most likely do, or you wouldn't be
Right.
going through that process.
And actually, Pete's Pet Posse got me to where when I graduated and got home and got a dog, I wanted to do all the certifications and have my dog be a therapy dog, to go to like the library and do reading stuff with kids. I wanted to go to the VA center and just stuff in the community. And my dog does not have the disposition. He doesn't do calm. He wants to go. And I think maybe as he gets older, he would be good for it, but he's more of a let's play all day, every day.
Well, if you have to go through the training like these dogs had to, maybe he would learn.
Yeah, he has some of the good foundation basics, but I think he's still too young and too playful.
I guess that might be something that does come into play. Their age of one.
It could.
Puppies.
Yeah.
Too much. A lot of things you don't really think about could come into play.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to you at some point will have a pet therapy dog.
One day I'm going to follow through. That is one of my goals in life, is to have a dog that is a therapy dog and be active in the community.
Okay. Just find the right one.
I gotta have the right one. And I think mine, once he gets older and calms, I think he'd be great. Because even if we're at family's house, he's excited to be there, wants to play, wants to go, and then he settles. But I think he's just still too young. He'll get there one day.
He'll get there.
And I think that's something. I know another Ruff Rider at the time, because we were talking about it at one of the visits. I said, this is something I want to do. She said, well, there's somebody in my town that does something like this, that did a program at the library. And I was like, that's a great idea. And she had said she wanted to do it too. I wish I could remember who it was. But it's cool getting to have those connections and interactions and those relationships with the other Ruff Riders and the owner handlers.
Cheer each other on, get us through. Would you have to, if after the event was over, would you be the one that would like take it for a walk or let it decompress too, and then more the handlers that would do that?
Yeah, it was all the handlers.
I wondered if you volunteered to work with a particular handler for the whole day with their dog here.
That would be awesome.
If you would be taking it out to potty or whatever.
I think it still would have to be the handler because of liability, and
okay,
I think that's what it would be.
Yeah. I guess that's true too. And then the leashes, I've noticed the leashes are short.
Yeah, I call them traffic leashes. Especially like for the large dogs, it's just so they can have close control. And of course, the little dogs, you're going to have a little bit longer, but it's still going to be a relatively short.
It makes sense, but you just don't think about that sort of thing either when you're delving into all of this. So I've learned a lot.
That, and when we were pulling in, I was like, campus is empty. And my husband's like, it's summertime. It's going to be empty. Because I've never been here when it's empty. There's always been students everywhere all the time, constantly.
It slows down quite a bit come May and June. Starting to pick up with freshman orientation groups or visits, I guess, coming to decide.
I saw some orientation and enrollment signs, and I was like, yeah, it's that time.
Come back and get your master's, huh?
One day, maybe.
But you glad you came the first time. You were already gone before COVID.
Yes. I was
but
gone.
did COVID we've been asking about just in general, what kind of impact COVID had on your day-to-day, or did it, or not so much?
It kind of did, just because it slowed down all the stuff I did personally outside of work, because we couldn't go anywhere, couldn't do anything. It didn't slow me down work-wise, just because I worked in a vet clinic and they still had to be open. If anything, it made us busier, everybody was at home. They couldn't go anywhere. So now they have time to get a new pet or 2 or 3. Well, those pets still need a vet. So we got busier, and so yeah, it kept me busy, but home life wise, we didn't get to do much just because there's nowhere to go. Like, we used to make it a deal, go have dinner and a movie once a month up in Oklahoma City. We still haven't been to a movie theater since COVID, just because we've gotten so used to having Hulu, Netflix, all that stuff have their premieres and stuff like that on where you watch it at home. There's no reason to go to a movie theater. And now I'm like, I just started seeing billboards for movies again and seeing ads for it on TV, and I'm like, oh, I haven't noticed that before, but now we're back to having movie trailers as commercials. So, yeah.
Well, working in the vet clinic, could the owners come back with the pet for checkups and that sort of thing?
Some clinics went curbside only. We stayed open. We gave the owners that choice, just because that's another liability from car to door. And we were a very transparent clinic. Of owners were always welcome into the exam room. We'd talk with them what's going on. If they wanted to be there, they could. If they wanted to take precautions and wait in the car, they were more than welcome to do that. And we would go back and forth with their pet and call them and communicate everything that we did find or didn't find and what was needed. Just because I know that separation could cause the owners to worry, but we wanted everything to go as smoothly as possible for the owners and their pets, because sometimes separating them, the pet would panic, and sometimes they did just fine.
So just more choice. Let them make the choice.
But we all, of course, we wore masks if we felt like we needed to, and we were a small clinic, so we didn't have to worry about more than 10 people in the building at once, because there was 6 of us on a good day. And just staff-wise, and of course we staggered our appointments. That way, only 1 or 2, they were in different rooms and crossed paths in the lobby. They were all, okay, you're over here, I'll stand over here. But I think everybody took the precautions. Of course, nobody took them like lightly or grain of salt wise, but I think everybody was just very understanding of, hey, well, I can't go anywhere, but you're still here, and y'all are really busy, but take your time. We'll do what we need to do.
A new caseload if people were getting more dogs.
Yeah, and that actually in the whole veterinary community is, there's not enough hours in the day. Everybody's running skeleton crew, or everybody. Most large clinics ran what I would call a skeleton crew. That way if somebody got sick, they could split the staff and go back and forth. That way they wouldn't have to fully shut down. And all these existing clinics had their caseload. Well, everybody got pets. Now they have more of a caseload, but they didn't get any new staff. And some did hire more staff. But then it goes back to, there's only so many hours in a day that you can see patients, because you still have to have that home life too. And clinics are still seeing that today. Of there's still a lot of pets. Veterinary industry is not falling, but more and more people have left the field, and not as many are coming in. So there's still more patients to clinic and staff ratio, and you can only do so much in a day. But then that means, well, Fluffy, it may be a few days to a few weeks, depending how severe or what's needing done before you can get in.
pets have taken on a whole different realm too in the last 20 years maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Much more. I don't know, more family inclusive, I guess, for the pets these days.
Yeah. Very.
Well, I'm a little bit different. Do you think any of the Ruff Riders that were involved with P3, it made them decide to get into veterinarian? Or
I know several of us that were.
To begin to.
Yeah, I'd say about a quarter to half of us were already vet med bound. Mm-hmm. And some of us weren't. Like my best friend Ashley, she does stuff for the fishery.
Yeah.
And she still does it, but she just loved being around the dogs. So she did it because she loved being around the dogs and the people. And then I did it because I was vet med bound. And so I don't think it was a deciding factor, but I think more of the vet med bound people did choose it just because it's experience in a way.
There's some correlation there. Yeah, I don't know what it is for sure either.
Yeah. Obviously, if you love animals, you're going to want to work with them in any way you can.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It all plays into itself, I guess, too. All right, let me check my list to make sure we've covered everything that I wanted to cover. Okay. Do you have anything else you want to that I don't know to ask? They did a Loyal and True award. Were you part of that, Ruff Riders, that got that? I don't know when that was.
I think so.
So that may be after you graduated.
I think that was
the first group that they actually gave that to was the Ruff Riders. I don't know what time period that was. Okay, we've talked about that. So, and you don't have anything else, so. Nope. Okay, highlights of your OSU experience, then, and we'll round it out.
P3, paddle people.
Paddle people.
The organization of students that has the pokes paddles at the football games. Yeah, I did that all 5 years. It was a lot of fun. I was even on the exec board for 3 or 4 of the years for that. So
I didn't even know that was an organized thing. I just figured you showed up and
it's a club organization, and at the time it was separate from like the student union organization or campus. I can't remember how they worded it, but it was separate. And then towards the end, it did become end of my collegiate career, they made it to where you had to camp to get a wristband to get in. Wow. And they made it for everybody could do it, not just the paddle people. So all the students could come and camp at Gundyville. And then if you camped all night, you got your wristband to get in early. And then if you camped so many games, you went ahead and got your wristband for towards the end of the season. So like when it was cold or snowing, you wanted to camp early possible throughout the year, so you got all your points. And that's how we did it, is there was a point system. So if you came to set up or tear down or whatever with camp, or you came to camp, we had opportunities throughout the year like paddle making, putting the wraps on them and drilling the holes for them, putting everything on them.
I had no clue.
Yeah, it was a fun organization.
So how many would get to, I've never counted, how many get to be at the game to do the paddling?
I can't remember how many we had. There was like over 100 of us for sure, but not everybody camped. Some did, some didn't. But camping basically secured your spot, like front row for each game.
There's probably at least 10 on the 10 over there pounded.
Oh,
there's more than that. I'll have to pay attention next time.
There's a lot.
How did you get interested in that?
So, it was first week of school. I was in college algebra, and someone asked me, like, hey, are you a freshman? What do you want to do? Is there any clubs that you've heard about? And I was like, I don't know what it's called. I just want to beat the wall with the sticks. And the girl in front of me goes, paddle people. We're having a meeting Sunday in the student union at 9. Be there. And I said, okay, I'll be there. And I was hooked ever since then.
So you had seen it on TV, or how did you even know that existed?
Saw it on TV, watching the football games, and I thought it looked fun. And I enjoyed football. So that was my way to...
And you did it all 5 years?
All 5 years.
Wow.
Still wish I could do it.
So P3 and paddles. I interrupted you. What else were highlights?
Oh, gosh. I enjoyed Res Life. That's how I met several of my friends. And, of course, some of us in Res Life were also in Paddle People. And, yeah, I'd say those. And I think the welcome parties they do every welcome week, just that's how I met some of the friends that I still have to this day. So definitely Res Life, P3, and Paddle People. Those are my highlights.
Okay. The library had a house party, welcome week house party, where they would give out treat or food and play games and all that. Did you during welcome week?
I think I went to one of them.
Okay.
And I think as a community mentor or an RA, we would say, like, hey, I'm going to this. If any of my residents or anybody wants to come, like, we'll kind of show you around campus if you want, or help you get involved in the stuff you want to get into. But Welcome Week has so many events, it's impossible to attend all of them. Yeah. But they're all great.
Oh, it's a fun time for you.
Mm-hmm. I loved it. There's days I'm like, man, I wish I could go back to college. Not so much for the classes, but
some of those were okay too.
Oh yeah, some of those classes, my animal science classes, were always my favorite. That's something that shocked me about coming here is everyone in high school always said, your professor's not going to let you have gum in class. They're not going to let you have a drink in class. I walked in one day, it was a plant and soil science class, and our professor started passing out like cereal. And she was using it for an example of the topic for the day, and it was Cocoa Puffs and Rice Krispies, the chocolate ones, to make it look like the soil. And she was like, okay, now if I pour milk, this is going to go all the way down because there's gaps in the middle. Now on the Cocoa Pebbles, it's kind of going to float for a little bit, and then it's going to settle. But she just passed out cereal, and then she was like, okay, after class, like, come get the rest of the cereal. Or she had a bowl and handed it to a student and then went up and started teaching. And I was like, okay, this is not what I was told about. But all the professors were so down to earth. You could talk to them, ask them any questions. They were so personable. That's, I think, what shocked me when I first came here. And I think I enjoyed most of my professors just because they were easy to talk to. They were like, oh, I'm your professor. I said this. This is why. That's in the story. It was like, hey, okay, you got a question. Let's come to my office. We'll go further into detail. I'll help you with whatever you need. If you still don't get it, come back another day. We'll go through it again until you understand it. I was like, this is great.
Yeah, students have to take advantage of them. Not all do, obviously.
No. Yeah. And I think you would have to try to fail at some of the classes because some of them are laid out. All you have to do is show up, do the work. And I don't get how which I get some courses are a lot harder. Chemistry, biochemistry, physics. Like, those are my tough ones. But some of the classes, especially if you loved the class so much, you would have to try to fail because it's set up to where all you have to do is just show up, put in a little bit of effort, and that's it. You're good to go.
Well, if there's help out there, if you just
so much help.
Do it.
So much help between the computer labs all across campus, the tutoring, the office hours that the professors and the TAs set, the study groups between students. I mean, OSU does not lack any educational resources that I can think of because they're all there. You just have to take advantage of them.
Mhm.
Even wellness-wise, there's the Colvin. They have counseling services. They have P3. They have all the healthy eating options on campus as well. I don't think they're short any resources that I can think of.
You're a good cheerleader for us.
I love it. And I'm always telling people, like, you should go to OSU. You'll love it. The campus is nice. Everybody's friendly. It's home away from home.
That's a compliment to the campus and the people who work here. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
And if there's nothing else, I'll say thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
It's been great.